Well, a while back I did a video on the first half of TNG Season 1. And I don't remember how long ago that's been, but I really was planning on doing videos on the rest of TNG, so let's get on with it. And last one ended up going rather long, so I'm going to just skip over a few of the basics. And if I was actually going to really deep dive into how the story worked out and specific plot elements, I'll try to do that in a special video on that specific episode. Alright, so here we have one of my personal favorites, Angel 1. Why? Because it's one of those things where it's arguably a Planet of Hats episode, but it's a Planet of Hats where the hats are detailed and nuanced. There's more to the hats than just we're evil, or we're a society where women rule and everyone else drools. You know, that sort of thing. And, it makes it very interesting when the bad guy of the week actually decides to play along with the good guys and doesn't. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll do what you want because I'll be nice. Why? Because the bad guy of the week wasn't really trying to be an evil jerk, an authoritarian jerk, but not evil. Anyway, though, the deep dive into the culture of Angel 1 was what made this episode particularly memorable to me. And of course, they went a pretty long way into making interesting sets for it, especially since so much of the episode takes place planet side on the Angel 1 homeworld. Even interesting stuff like this background art, which is apparently their, version of the Great Seal or something. Very interesting. And that made the episode so much better than if it was a bottle show on board the ship, where they're negotiating with the people of Angel 1 on board the ship instead of planet side. Anyway, though, so for that one, this is one of the episodes that really defines TNG. Really is. Like, yes, you have Fighting the Borg, which is something people remembered more. But when it came to, the rest of the show, with the diplomatic side of the show, this episode defined it. And moving on. The Binars. This is an episode that got really strange because of the fact that it had a nuance to the plot that got sort of halfway written into the story and never explained. And also, it was supposed to be related to one of the other episodes directly, but that relation got left out. So instead of being a two-part episode, it's just a one-off that has certain aspects that don't make a lot of sense. But anyways, computer specialists, the Binars, have decided to borrow the main computer of the Enterprise to store their planetary database, because their planet, needs better computer shielding, and the Enterprise's computer is better shielded than their planet's. They go through a whole lot of effort to make it so that the process won't inconvenience the crew of the Enterprise. And they do this to keep Riker distracted and, also available for Riker to turn things back on, because the Binars don't actually have full control of everything. The whole minuet question is actually something that's one of the key aspects of the episode that's completely unresolved. What was minuet? because if you pay attention in the episode, the Binars act like they don't know. If the Binars don't know, then that means the Binar didn't actually make her like that. And that's where that whole mystery came in, where it was supposedly the Binars finding something in the computer to use that wasn't actually their creation. Anyway, though, in terms of being a bottle episode that really wasn't, yeah, because again, is that this character actually shows up in later episodes, because you have episodes where Riker remembers things from his past, and he remembers her because for a holodeck character, she was, the most interesting holodeck character he'd ever seen. And moving on. This is one of those where it gets really, really interesting when you consider the full lore implications of this, because this guy is old. This guy is an old man who took a drug to that is considered banned by the Federation medical personnel, that is supposedly a youth restoring serum. Well, he overdosed on it because he wanted to make it work faster. Well, you see, overdosing on it makes you de-age, yes, but it also physically cripples you in a way that you're probably not going to get better from. This is also kind of hinted at as being the reason why it's banned, is that actually using it properly requires incredibly careful dosage. And also there's the potential of having annoying side effects anyways, even if you do the dosage right. Realistically, that was the only interesting part of this, though. The idea that such things exist in the Star Trek universe. Anyway, though, because it's just hostage negotiations with him wanting to be his old young self, because his old young self is what got the Federation into this mess. And he wants to finish the job he started years ago. Well, I mean, he kind of does. But he dies. And that is the interesting thing with this episode, is that most of the episode is actually just filler. A hostage negotiation plot that I can't say that it's illogical or doesn't fit in Star Trek. It really does. It's just that it's dull and boring. Because, see, it says the whole thing for this is that the guy who Jameson had been negotiating with in the past has basically decided that he wants to demand that they hand over Jameson to be executed or something. Well, he's dead. Anyway. The funny thing with this, though, is that with Jameson's death, that the guy who he'd wronged years ago, it's like, okay, fine, I give up now. You were 5 minutes ago, you were giving us a reason to want to shoot you and all of your men, and now you're just going to be like, okay, fine, whatever. Not a terrible episode, but it's one of those where the implications on Federation medicine are what really, really hit the mark, not the actual story. Okay. See, this is the Aldean episode. See, this is the planet Aldea. Also the planet Aldea. Because the Federation has found a planet where natural childbirth is no longer possible because everyone's dying of some sort of degeneration condition. And they have impressive technology, and their technology makes them actually live quite a long time, and thus the people of Aldea are actually doing quite well for themselves. It's just that they can't have children They are also, while they're long-lived, they're actually dying of their technology. Because their planet has this energy field that's creating that's slowly killing them, and the emphasis is on slowly. The process takes like 50 years to actually kill someone. I don't know the exact time. But so they have taken to abducting children from uh, starships that come near their planet, and raising the children to be Aldeans, and yeah, that. Does this seem like something that's actually a sustainable model to you? No, because it doesn't to me. Not at all. Their culture was dying, and that was the entire point behind this whole thing. They were actually at the point where they're like, okay, fine, we give up. Please help us, and just like straight up negotiate with the Federation for assistance, because, well, see, the only reason their planet hasn't been attacked in the last however many 100 years is that they've been running a cloaking device to make it so people can't see their planet from a distance. But the cloaking device is, well, that critical defect where it's slowly killing everyone. And that means, yeah, chromosomal damage is supposedly what the cloaking device is doing to people. Does this logically make sense? No, it's Star Trek though. People have gotten chromosomal damage from weirder things. In terms of being an... See, this is a sort of episode that you could easily make a modification of as a plot for a Star Trek Adventures module. Because it's relatively self-contained, it has an interesting culture, and so on. And like, you could do something similar to that with the three previous ones we looked at too, but just like this one, above all of the ones we've seen so far, it feels more like a TTRPG module than the previous ones. This one, I could also work with this one as a TTRPG module too, because like, again, this is one of the true bottle episodes from TNG, where almost everything takes place on board the ship. There's a few shots where they visit the planet and acquire the crystalline entity, a very, very small crystalline entity at that. This is it making itself gigantic, or trying to anyways. The biggest it's able to make itself is the size of a golf ball. And this is an entity that is actually capable of causing problems bad enough for the crew of the Enterprise that it was referred to as fighting a war. Interesting. And it's the size of a golf ball after making itself as large as it possibly can. Yeah. Yeah, they're referred to as microbrains, and while it's one of those things where it's like a strange technical victory, it's like, oh, we figured out how to communicate with them and talk them into making peace. And oh yeah, by the way, they want us to get off their planet and not come back for 300 years. Yeah, okay. You could make a TTRPG module out of that. It's just... the story is so simplistic. It'd take a little work. Alright. Coming of age. This is one of the ones where it is one of the most Wesley Crusher of Wesley Crusher stories, and I don't really feel like this would be personally a good thing to adapt. But because of the fact that it's so centered on Wesley, if it wasn't that heavily centered on Wesley, sure. Also, I honestly didn't think it was a very good story anyways. One thing you could do is, instead of having it solely focused on Wesley, because like, when Wesley is there for the little exam thingy, there's several other characters. You could try to have the different members of the group take different roles among the people doing the exam. Honestly, other than that, I can't think of any ideas that it would actually be good. And of course, that means using a similar concept and drastically rewriting everything. Now, this one. The episode that defined TNG Klingons the most, and in a bad way, in my opinion. Because the fact that it made them very, very one note, and these guys are also very, very different. Also, there's the whole, it's like, oh, we must have a honorable death, or we will not go to Stovokor. Oh, well, we died of an accident, so we can't have an honorable death anyways. And it's just, yeah. I honestly hated this episode. There's a lot of people who like it because of the whole Klingon stuff, and this is actually something that you could actually make a TTRPG module out of. I didn't like the story, but it is something that you could throw at a group of players as a problem to solve. And it's like, are you going to just, shoot the Klingons like they deserve, or are you going to find some more diplomatic solution to the issue, despite the fact that the Klingons literally want to die, and they want you to shoot them to death. Ah, boy. Oh, yeah. Also, there's the fact that the Klingons apparently murdered the crew of that were Talarians that this ship had. Yeah. That's one of the other aspects of this that makes the story. It's like, how about we just shoot the Klingons when I look at it? But whatever. Anyways, usable as story fodder, not great though. But it's a story. It's a very one-note story. Arsenal of Freedom. This is one of the episodes that has all of the things. A very, very lore hungry episode where you're like, okay, so that happened, but why? And if that happened, then that means that this other thing also happened. Because the key thing with Planet Minos, they were arms dealing in interstellar territory. See, their race got killed off by a rogue computer system that they had developed to automate fighting wars. Okay. But here's the thing. Who were they selling to? Not the Federation. That raises so many questions. Because these guys were selling a lot of hardware to a lot of people. And until their world went dark, they were one of the greatest arms merchants in the galaxy, supposedly. Makes you wonder very many, many questions. And as a TTRPG module, the story of investigating the fate of the Minosians is actually something that is very interesting, because the fact that, a lot of things happen going there. You have to, try to avoid getting killed by their computer tools. Because, quite frankly, they are the same systems that killed off the Minosian population. They're not fully offline yet. They have had decades of misuse and lack of maintenance, but some of them are still working and fully capable of killing you. Now, I have to say that the actual episode as televised, the special effects were not great. However, the idea of the episode was amazing. And the lore implications of the episode were even better than the actual story itself. Because who the heck are these guys? And just who else in the galaxy has this hardware? Because, like the guy says, he was selling it to the highest bidder. That means that the Echo Papa system on Minos wasn't unique. Oh boy. That is actually something you could mine for story fodder by, not looking at Minos itself, but looking at people who have Minosian technology and maybe possibly figured out how to duplicate it. Because again, the Minosians were selling people working hardware. They weren't selling people blueprints and technical schematics for creating the hardware. People would have to, reverse engineer that. However, Minosian technology, even if you don't fully reverse engineer all of the details, is impressive to say the least. And moving on. The Tasha Dies episode. Oh wait, no, that's the next one. Never mind. This is the Ornarin episode. And the Ornarin episode is one of those that creates a strange logical paradox, because you have Alien of the Week that's a super alien, but they're also drug addicts, and the Federation decides that, you know what, we're going to invoke the Prime Directive because these people have lost the ability to travel through the galaxy and lost the ability to interact with the galactic community as a whole, and thus we have decided to leave them to sit and rot in silence on their planet and die in silence where we don't have to look at them. Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things you could definitely adapt this as a TTRPG module. I'm not entirely sure exactly what angle you'd want to look at, what would be best. Because one thing that I personally think would be a very, very good way of going about this is a follow-up to the original and not trying to retell the story, because this was the start of a story. Because while this redefined the Ornarin civilization, it did so in a way that would have, fallout years down the road that we haven't seen. So, that's fertile ground to explore. It's called symbiosis because there's two different planets in the Ornarin system, one of which has been selling the drug Felicium to the other. And the whole thing with Felicium is that it was the cure to some disease, but see, Felicium is actually a narcotic. And while it prevents you from dying from the disease, if you don't stop taking it, the weird part with this is that they decide not to tell the Ornarins about this. Yeah, they decide not to tell the Ornarins about this, and they said, instead decide to leave them to suffer in silence and not help them. We're going to help you by forcing you to solve your problems on your own. Yeah, billions are going to die, and it's all your fault, Picard. Anyways, moving on. Now for the Tasha Dies episode. I think this is actually Riker's face. This is an episode that has very interesting implications because, one, who is Armis? And more importantly, when you listen to Armis's backstory, he has a lot of backstory. And it's one of those things, it's like, okay, so if that's your backstory, then why haven't we seen the stuff you talked about in your backstory yet? Now that is something you could do for story fodder in a TTRPG module. Because, this is something you could totally send a team of players to try and figure out. It's like, what the heck was Armis talking about? Because there's a whole lot to unpack in that episode. Also, there's the fact that Armus is actually genuinely a terrifying super alien. It's one of those super alien of the week where they have good reason to want to kill him and fail at that task. And so they decide that they are going to settle for getting away from the planet so that they're out of range of his abilities and telling everyone to stay off the planet. That was an interesting way to end the episode. It was actually a relatively boring episode except for that stuff. It's kind of like emotional drama to fill time while you're trying to... Yeah. Honestly, I think that they could have cut the episode down to 30 minutes and made it better. Anyways. Yes, one of the temporal bullshit episodes that people find to be extremely interesting because of the fact that the nature of the temporal anomalies is interesting. Mannheim and their research into temporal anomalies does a whole lot of stuff. You could actually definitely make a temporal anomaly focused module about this, though, because the fact that it's a story with problems to solve. It's not really a, like, oh no, we're fighting the bad guy of the week. No. This is a story where you investigate and figure out what's going on and find solutions to problems. And that would actually make a pretty interesting module, although possibly one people would find a solution for very, very quickly. But whatever. In terms of big picture lore, the fact that the Federation has this level of experimentation with temporal mechanics and practical experimentation and not just theoretical pondering of how the universe works, oh my. Yeah. And also there's the implication that they were able to breach the walls of reality as we know it and attempt to get to somewhere that's not here. But they don't really explain that one. It's one of those things where it's like metaphysical stuff that things man was not meant to know, and that's sort of so on and so forth. Did they really find a different level of reality or not? I don't know. Who knows? It's fiction. Contagion. This is an episode infamous for having blood and gore. In Star Trek. Shocking. Dead guy. Eviscerated dead guy. Yeah. So, we have the parasites who many people have mentioned as being somewhat similar to the Goa'uld from Stargate, which is absolutely fair. Although the Goa'uld from Stargate idea is actually more from the series, not from the original movie. But this is something that you could definitely do as a TTRPG module. It's like, you don't necessarily need to follow this plot, because this plot has massive, far-reaching implications. This was an alien civilization attacking the Federation. Who was it? The episode doesn't tell you. It just has the ominous implication that there are more of them out there, waiting in the darkness of deep space. Well, you could send the players to find out where those came from, and maybe live to tell about it, maybe not. Sounds scary. But yeah, this is something that big picture actually didn't do a whole lot at all. One thing that has been mentioned in behind the scenes stuff is that this was actually part of their idea of coming up with a big bad. They were spitballing ideas for a new big bad to have in TNG, which ended up being the Borg, but this is something that was one of their plot threads that they were tinkering with until they came up with the idea of it being the Borg. We'll get back to that later. Definitely one of those things you could play with. it's interesting in and of itself, but it's one of those big picture things where you're like, oh, that's a thing that exists. What am I going to do about it? Beyond that, though, small picture is actually not that big of a deal, as strange as it seems. Although, the impact that this had on the Starfleet command structure, because presumably several senior admirals ended up dying, yeah, that's a thing. Anyways, moving on to the final one for this incarnation, the neutral zone, i.e. the episode where they actually see Romulans in TNG for the first time. They were mentioned in some of the previous episodes as still existing, and so letting the viewers know that the producers hadn't forgotten that they existed, but they didn't actually show them. Anyway, though, this is about old Earth tech, a sleeper ship like the Botany Bay, except it's not the Botany Bay. It doesn't have augments on it. It actually has very, very old humans who are not augments and predated the augment war and had been cryogenically frozen in order to preserve their lives and jettisoned into deep space so that the cold of space could be used instead of a cryogenic maintenance procedure, so that they're actually literally just chunks of ice floating in deep space with no power to maintain them. Yeah. Also, since they're floating in deep space, it's taken centuries for people to figure out where the heck they drifted off to. Anyways, though, so you have several people from the 20th century on Earth who, meet the crew of the Enterprise D, and one of them comes to an interesting realization when Picard is talking to T-Bok, the Romulan commander that we see here, is that the Romulan commander is bluffing, and somehow Picard doesn't pick up on the fact that the Romulan commander is bluffing. That so he goes, this has mention of something that I alluded to earlier. There is a new threat on the horizon for the Federation and the Romulan Star Empire both, where something has been attacking colonies along the neutral zone, and in a manner of destruction that is never seen before or after in Star Trek The Next Generation. The type of destruction of colonies was described as physically removing the entire colony from the planet. Ominous, terrifying. No one had any idea what was going on, though. It's like Romulans. Romulans are known for, burning holes in buildings with plasma torpedoes and disruptors. Not, using a tractor beam to rip the entire colony out of the ground. And, Romulans, of course, being sneaky, decided to accuse the Federation of being the cause in order to try to coax the Federation into defending themselves by providing evidence to the contrary and proving that it wasn't the Federation, and thus giving the Romulans information they didn't already have, because, let's face it, the Romulans didn't actually know anything either. Anyway, though, that was the thing that was the big picture aspect of this. It's like the main plot with the people from the 20th century was really the side story, because this episode was to set up the big, scary future threats, which, it turned out to be the Borg, but the way it's described in this episode doesn't sound like the Borg at all. However, it's a threat that neither the Federation nor the Romulan Star Empire actually has any identity for yet. Also, going back to the parasite aliens. Yeah, parasite aliens would actually make a lot more sense when it comes to, stealing entire colonies. But, we never actually saw what the TNG uh, writers were seriously planning to make them into being. I mean, a non-humanoid race, yes, which I believe was actually shelved because of the fact that they decided that it would be too difficult to make puppet insects and actually use puppet insects as actors in an episode. Which, of course, meant that they went with the Borg because you can just have man-in-suit technology for Borg. Which, again, the Borg, being described as a hive mind, is kind of sort of a relation to the whole like bug people idea that was previous. It's like, oh, we're going to make them cyber zombies who have a hive mind. Because again, that was actually one of those things that they kind of alluded to in the conspiracy, is that the bug people don't have individual consciousness the way humans do. You get infected by a parasite, and then you do what the parasite collective consciousness wants you to do. Yeah, that's one of those things that was kind of sort of like barely there and not really explained, because they were planning on, returning to that in a later episode and didn't decide to info dump the race all at once because they were planning to look at it again later. Anyways, well, that is it for TNG Season 1. It ends with an episode that is half lame nonsense, half ominous foreshadowing. Dum dum dum. Also, it sets up the Romulans as being a power that is going to be mostly diplomatic from now on. Yeah. Open warfare between Federation and the Romulan Star Empire is not something that you see until DS9, and even then it's very limited. The Romulans have decided that they have more important things to do than trying to blow up the Federation. And, honestly, that was actually a good place to start with them. At any rate, that's enough of this for now. See you guys later.